Perfect. So I have 10 minutes. Hello, hi. I'm Rosie David, or Rosadene David, however you may know me. I'm currently teaching at Universidad del Norte here in Barranquilla, Colombia, and I'm very happy to be representing my university here. Today, I would like to talk to you about multisensory teaching. The title of this presentation is Multisensory Teaching in the Foreign Language Classroom. So I always get a lot of questions about what is multisensory teaching and how does it apply to me? Well, many of us teach in many different types of classrooms. Some of us teach more than just language, right? In my case, I teach international relations and I teach English. So from that perspective, we have to think about how we can put things together to scaffold them, as we heard by our previous speaker, to all of our learners. So if you have ever painted a picture, for instance, in a science class, or if you've sung a song and danced around in an English class, or if you've built a structure in a math class, you already have an idea of what multisensory teaching is. So multisensory teaching actually is a way to combine all of the senses and to help us have explicit, direct instruction that helps the students understand how they're learning in multiple different facets. So when you think about these senses, you can see it on my little screen here. You see the hands, which is touch, feel, connecting it to your eyes so you see it, practicing speech and producing it, and becoming kinesthetic and hearing it. So when you think about this, I want you to think about multisensory as a way to engage students' visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile pathways, either simultaneously or one at a time, in order so they're actually to go through this learning process and really experience learning in a hands-on manner. So why is this important? I get asked this all the time, and one of the reasons I want you to think about why this is important is because people, students, we all learn so many different ways, right? So some students may learn best from hearing, while others may learn best from seeing. Some may learn best from learning through doing, and some of us are a combination of those different learning styles. I don't know if any of you have had the opportunity to do your own learning styles inventory, but once you start understanding how you learn, you can see how oftentimes as teachers, we're reliant on how we learn best. So in a multisensory classroom, we're trying to move these techniques together so that all students have the right to learn. Moreover, let me change this arrow. Moreover, multisensory instruction is particularly useful for students who have learning differences. It is proposed that between 10 and 15% of all students have some sort of specific learning difference. So that means if we're just thinking 10%, that if we have 20 students, 2 of our students are gonna have a harder time obtaining information because they may have something like dyslexia, dyspraxia, so on and so forth. So when we start having explicit, direct, clear instruction that's also multisensory, we're able to really hone in on our students and help them understand their overall learning ability. Okay, so my passion, I can't help it, I always have to do this plug. My passion's learning differences. It is my heart and soul. So as you see here, you can see some of the things that students with learning differences benefit from. So again, going back to that example of like painting a picture, drawing, being able to really put things together, students really benefit from this. So if you see the acquisition of numeracy, some students really suffer from this. And some students may have a problem with the acquisition of literacy or with their coordination and their movements. Also, there's other students that have problems with specific language impairment, which is actually being able to comprehend and produce a language. So they may be able to hear it, for instance, yeah? But then reproducing it's really hard. And so oftentimes we start focusing on what's hard, what's difficult, and then we can't produce. But when you have a multisensory classroom, or when you're trying to demonstrate a multisensory classroom, there's less focus on just what you're doing, and actually you start moving through all these different activities. So in a minute, I'm going to start talking to you about the kinds of activities you can do to support your learners. I've skipped Asperger's and also ADHD, and I'm sorry. I wish I had more time to explain them, but we don't have a lot of time. I got, I think, 7 minutes left. Okay. So with that, I want you to look at this little picture I made, and I want you to think about this. When we're teaching a language, we are trying to build all sorts of different types of pathways in order to have awareness, language awareness. Now you see morphological and syntactic awareness as these fancy words that we're supposed to know. But really, what's important here is that through learning different ways, we are connecting not only grammar and lexical information, but we're also getting students to actually have a lived experience in the language. So for instance, when we're building auditory pathways, we're thinking about what we're hearing, our ears. When we're building our visual pathways, we're connecting it to our eyes. When we're thinking about our tactile pathways, we're thinking about what we can touch and feel and move around. And kinesthetic is also movement, right? Being able to actually move, learning through doing, processing. And sometimes I get asked, is this really necessary for adults? I'm like, of course. So yes, this also benefits children, but it of course benefits adults. The more we're engaged with what we're learning, the more we're able to connect it to these pathways. So I want to give you this little piece of advice. Tell me, I may forget. Show me, I may remember. Involve me, and I'll understand. So when you're thinking about multisensory learning, think, see it, hear it, touch it, feel it, do it. Yeah, like that's the idea behind this. Okay, so here we go, slide 7. We're looking at visual techniques for learning. So these are some ways, as you can see on my PowerPoint presentation, that learners learn best with their eyes. So you can make flashcards and identify with picture, mind maps, graphic organizers, outlines. Use colors to organize information. So if you color code verbs blue, do not color code them green the next. When you think about how you're going to organize this information on the table, make sure that the students understand it. So really, this allows students to watch and see what they're learning, and it really helps them connect it. So think about these things as you're moving forward. You can also talk about where your tongue is, how it's moving. That will help them draw correspondence to what they're doing. Okay, flying to the next slide. Okay, auditory. So oftentimes we like to use things like books on tape, peer-assisted reading, meaning reading in pairs, or even a computerized reader text or text reader. So you can find these for free online, and they help. They help students learn. Also, videos with accompanying audio. Why not? Songs, music, rhythms, chants, jazz chants. I know it's a little outdated, but we still use it. So when we build phonetic awareness, we help students put the sounds together and see the differences. And so also you can use things like rubber bands to think about, again, the mouth position and also how wide the sounds or the vowels might be. Oof, slide 9, here we go, tactile. So I will say this, tactile is going to be very similar to the next slide you will see. So if I get cut off, it's okay. But tactile learners learn best through their sense of touch, right? They need to feel things and do them. So one of my favorite techniques is sand trays. Literally getting some sand, putting it in a tray, having students trace words or spell in the sand. They can feel it. Or raised line paper. Even finger painting. I know it sounds crazy. Sometimes when students are having a hard time, I like the idea of using clay, Play-Doh, to actually sculpt things. And yes, this is more useful at times for lower level learners, but you'll see with adult learners who like to doodle, they also enjoy this. So it goes back to the idea of read it, write it, build it. Because if you're able to do this and put it together, students will be able to read a word, write a word, and build it using some sort of instrument, whether it's spaghetti, clay, or magnets. Okay, finally, 10, kinesthetic. Okay, like I said, these are very similar. So kinesthetic learners learn best through movement and their cross-motor skills. So games that involve movement, let them move. Get them into different groups. Pairing is so important. So any activity that forces them to move, leather tiles, coins, dominoes, puzzles, This is great. Air writing for spelling, that will help. And let them write with their fingers in the air and then say it out loud. All of these techniques are really useful.